Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tenacitystrength Fit for Duty podcast. I am your host, Larry Brown. My co-host, Vaughn Atteen, is still fighting crime in the streets of Gotham City, New York City, as he is a detective. But I'm holding down the fort for right now. We should be back online here within the next month or so, and we'll be going from there with a dual anchor show. But until then, it's just me, and I'm glad to bring on part two of a conversation that I had with powerlifting coach, John David Reynolds. John, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. Enjoying the day.
Good. I know it just started. Thank you for being so gracious, joining me on an early, what's the day? Wednesday morning?
It's Tuesday.
No, it's Wednesday. Is it Tuesday? No, it is Tuesday. See, this is what happens when, your off days are at the beginning of the week. Everything just kind of runs together from Saturday. So you just kind of like forget what day it is. But in any event, also, if anybody can hear some Coco Melon or the Wiggles in the background, that's my son. So I do apologize if he starts screaming or singing along. I don't encourage it, but I don't restrict it either. So there you go. But in any event, so where we left off at was, powerlifting training and all that. So one thing that has transpired since our last conversation was that we had a couple of hybrid athletes turn professional at the USA Championships. For those that do not follow bodybuilding, the USA's is a pro qualifier put on by the National Physique Committee, or the NPC for short. And it was Hunter Henderson and Ben Pollock, but otherwise known as PhD Deadlift. What did you think about those results, and does it show how effective powerlifting is to help potentiate gains in bodybuilding?
So I'm of the school of thought that if it makes muscle, it's gonna get you where you want to be. Period. Like if it don't make muscle, it don't make sense. That's my philosophy. I tell all my clients that. And then when you really look back at the beginning of strength sports and bodybuilding in the 1950s and such like that, most of those guys, all those guys actually did the big three lifts in some form or fashion because they didn't have all the machines. So I've always felt that powerlifting and the powerlifting movements were great stating what the foundation of a physique will look like. When you actually go over, because like after you get past that, then all your accessories do is fill out the rest of your physique, because like often like after a certain point, it becomes obvious what the powerlifter needs to work on, bigger arms, pulling out your calves, getting the aesthetic part right, which was a big part of Ben's transition. Because if you look at all of his shows, like the first year he did it was like, okay, arms really need to come up, need to add more detail to his back, need to, it was little things. So I always felt that it was actually kind of important to have some form of foundation in like the powerlifting movements. And then the stronger you got, the better you can translate that intensity into your training.
So when we're talking prep for both, I want to take Ben Pollock's prep for the Pioneer Cup and the USA. Basically did two preps in one, because he's closing in on Pioneer, but he also prepped for the USA. What are some considerations that people need to take into account if they're going to do both in a rather condensed period of time?
So because like most people sit there and feel like powerlifters are fat. And essentially a lot of them are, because they don't take the time to put the discipline into their eating, into the discipline of actually following that program completely. But if you're actually on top of what you're eating and eating properly, you'll find yourself fueled better to perform better, which will get you a better total. And so the big part to me was watching. I thought it was more interesting that the bodybuilding show came before the before the meet because of the diet differential. It would probably be easier if you did the powerlifting show before. But when you're doing it, one of the bigger things to me that really matters is that, man, understanding your ability to train at a nutritional deficit. Now, when you're sitting up there, understand what your deficit is, and then give yourself a lot of time to do it. You want to look at a long prep between, like, if you can give yourself 20, 24 weeks, great. And then watch how your body responds to your calories. Notice when you need to add in a refeed, or if you even need one. Don't sit there and think you need one just for, you have to be really disciplined and mindful of what you're doing with your food. And then the other part, and with that, cardio and knowing is how much cardio is going to be enough and how much is going to be too little. Because in some cases, if you're already lean, if you're lean going into the prep, you're already in a good position. If you let yourself get way too far away from your diet, then expect the longer prep. Don't expect you to be able to go right into it. Because the bigger that transition is, trying to get lean becomes really hard. You can't actually take time off from, you can't take a big time off from the lean portion of like going into bodybuilding, period. Because of that, you'll look at a lot of people and they just look fat. It's like you can't get the definition, you can't get the shape, you can't get and the closer you can stay to your leanness, even when you're prepping for your powerlifting meet, then the better position you're going to be in.
Is a bodybuilding show something you recommend to most powerlifters? Because I tell everybody, like, you should definitely try to at least do one or at least a very, very serious recomp to find out what foods work with your body, what supplements work with your body, what foods. That's something that I generally recommend to people, even if you don't step on stage. Is that something that you advise to clients at least to do once, just to get a feel for how things work?
So actually, it's funny you would ask me that because I actually do something like that. Generally, I would do like an abbreviated prep phase where I tend to get my clients to do like a 16-week program where we focus on getting them in line with the nutrition, cardio, and getting all those things together. And as we get them so that they can understand their body, because the better they understand their body and the better I understand their body, we can be on the same page throughout their training. And then it better allows me to be able to program or adjust something to say, okay, you know what, this isn't working, this is working, and we're going to get you better results with a better understanding on your part and on mine.
Walk me through a typical powerlifting meet prep, and someone comes to you, says, hey, about 8 weeks out, I like to throw in a bodybuilding show. This person is not fat. This person's actually have a decent bit of muscle. They have some holes. Walk me through that.
Okay. So about 8 weeks out, my biggest concern right then would be, I would actually be looking at what their actual workload has been, because I want to see how you're recovering from your training as it is. If you're sitting up there, if you can hit your primary big lifts, and then you still got a decent amount of energy, then okay, I can see this possible. And then after I see that, then we're going to start to try to fill those holes in. Once you start filling the holes in, we'll look at doing I want to do some abbreviated sets at the end of the workouts, where we look at, so like if it's arms, then I want you to do 3 to 5 warm-up sets real quick in succession, try to keep them intense. And then we're going to go straight into, you do your first working set. You'll be going for like 10 to 12 reps. If you can hit 12, go up and wait for the next set. And I want you to try to beat that number in the next set. Each one of them, I want to push that intensity. And the whole idea would be to try to get them to force extra activity without actually forcing them to overwork, considering, because like as they adjust, they kind of, to me, I prefer them to get an adjusted working period to where they can actually handle more sustained intensity on isolation movements. Because again, if you've been working, if you're working, especially if you're working toward a peak for powerlifting, a lot of times, a lot of your energy level is going to be diminished from your heavier lifts. And so if you're not used to going right into doing that heavy amount of accessory work, yeah, your performance on your accessories is just going to be trash. So the primary concern for me is going to be making sure that you can go into those sessions. We can do that extra work with adding in the extra work, then having the proper recovery in place for you to be successful and grow. Then after that, we're going to look at your diet, watch how you're responding, and then we'll adjust the cardio amounts gradually and slowly. Like I'll literally start somebody off with like 30 to 40 minutes a day, 4 to 5 days a week, see how your body's responding, and then we'll go there week to week. I like doing weekly check-ins. Hell, if I'm being honest, I would do every third day if somebody came to me 8 weeks out. Because like I really wanted to see how you're responding, how you're inflamed. If you get inflamed post workouts, if you whatever, I want to know what's going to be the best way to get you to recover as fast as possible, so I can get the best look on stage. I don't want you going on stage stressed out and bloated.
You mentioned recovery. How do you monitor that? Do you use a device, or is it just good old fashioned client feedback, coach assessment on their recovery, and then take away or add volume depending upon what feedback you get?
Yep, good old feedback. I want to see, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Can you eat all your meals? Is eating a chore for you? How's your gut feeling? Are you getting bloated when you eat certain things? I want to know what you're doing, how you're feeling. Are you getting massages? Are you hitting the sauna? What are you doing for your recovery? And how are you doing it? And then also, what are you doing just for your extra work that, what your NEAT looks like? Are you getting extra steps in? Are you, like I was training a guy who was a ER nurse. And so it was like, his days were super hectic. He worked 12, 15-hour days. And then all of a sudden I have to sit up there and I'm like, all right, I want you doing an hour of cardio. I want you doing 45 minutes of cardio. It'd be two different things. Cause like I would say he found himself sleeping the entire day. When he wasn't training and at work, he was asleep. So, I just want to talk to where you're at, because the better I can understand how your body's responding, the better I can sit up there and get, like I said, the ideal position is to make sure your body isn't stressed out to where your body reflects the negative feedback loop.
So what do you think of a lot of the new school devices that's out, like the Whoop, the Aura Ring? Does it aid, or is it kind of like an expensive tool that's not really super needed, at least from a powerlifting standpoint?
Okay, so I'm still a big nerd, so I'm all for data. I love information. The more information I get, that excites me. I ask a lot of questions to my clients. As far as training goes, I want to know, hey, how's this feeling? What does this look like? Are you doing this? Did you make any adjustments on your own? What do you feel like? So I could see how it could be helpful. I don't use them, but I could see some benefits in them. I've actually got friends who use them. And I mean, another one school of thought that I could come up with, I really don't see a beginner needing it, but it could teach a beginner what actually training intensity looks like over time if they were a person who learned with that kind of information. Generally, I feel like it would be something that would actually work from a client-to-client basis, depending on the way they felt or looked at training. Not so much as a one-size-fits-all type tool. So mostly, I don't think it's really necessary. There are plenty of ways to actually get proper feedback and get accurate feedback even without such devices.
let's talk a little bit about general population strength training. So there's this, well, I shouldn't say there's always been this myth that, lifting heavy weights as you get older in life is bad, or lifting heavy weights in general is bad. It's going to make you bulky if you're a woman. It's going to slow you down if you're an athlete. Opinions and thoughts on why general population needs to be getting in the rack, getting on the bench, grabbing the heavier set of dumbbells that's down collecting dust.
Okay, this is one of my favorite topics. I tell a lot of my clients are moms, and I look at them and when they ask me certain questions, I look at them and I say, all right, I have a question for you. When it comes to you being able to take care of your children, take care of your family, you want to be ready, you want to be able, you want to be capable. If that is the case, why would you want to be less than strong enough to do the job? Your goal every time you walk into the gym is to improve yourself. It is to see yourself get one step better. If you can get that little bit better, then you're a little bit better for your family. You're in a little bit better health. You're in a little bit better position to actually overcome whatever goals you have set in place for you, for your family, for the people that look up to you. You should never be sitting up there thinking, oh, well, I getting stronger. No, getting stronger helps you. Getting stronger builds strong bones. Getting stronger builds a healthy heart. Getting stronger enables you to be strong enough for life, because everything in life is going to put a challenge in front of you. We talk about the 2 car accidents I've been in. Without my strength, without my ability to do what I do, I do not survive those accidents. And then more importantly, I do not survive the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 operations. and the doctors even said that. I lose my legs. My neighbor was in the identical accident I was in 2018, like almost identical, the direction where he hit his truck, everything. However, he died. His dashboard got embedded into his chest. It caved in. His heart stopped. There's a certain level of strength that comes internally and mentally with training all the time to get better. If you're always thinking to get better, then that's going to translate over into everything else in your life.
What does Mark Bell say? Strength is never a weakness.
Exactly. I was actually thinking that.
And it's so funny, and I hope a lot of people that are my colleagues or are my friends that aren't in the weight room, I want them to hear this and I want them to internalize this. Your CrossFit style or off-brand CrossFit style of working out, your consistent cardio, your low weight, high rep training, you may think it's working. I assure you, it ain't doing jack shit. You have to have some type of plan in place that has variables, right? And when I say variables, meaning that you can measure the progress, that you can wave things up and down like weight, that you can scale back things like the intensity, stuff that you can actually measure. All right. Some things out here you can't measure. When you go to even when you go to a CrossFit box, there are some levels of measurement, right? Like, the weight, the time that you're doing it at, because a lot of people go by CrossFit. When they do CrossFit, they're training for the games without actually participating in the games. You know what I mean? So they have to scale their training. It's not just more. But from what I'm seeing, a lot of these spots, and I'm not gonna mention no names, the shit ain't working.
I totally agree with that. What's funny to me about certain like CrossFit enthusiasts, that's what I call them, because they don't understand the variables. They don't understand the breaks. They don't understand the rest periods. The most important part ready for any strength event any fitness event, is actually understanding how to properly peak for your performance for the event.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, people don't understand that. Like, if you're like just saying, I'm going to take 30 seconds break instead of a minute, that's an intensity variable. Or saying, hey, I'm going to go, it's until I can get to the next exercise. That's my break. Like, whatever, however you adjust these variables impacts it a lot. Or understanding that the day that you're doing cleans, okay, what are you doing the day before? Can what you doing the day before impact your clean day? Or are you going to do 2 training sessions that day? Why do you pick the second set of exercise for the second group based off of what you did in the other one? You know, different variables can interfere or interrupt the feedback loop of what you're trying to accomplish.
Let's talk, life outside the gym for a minute. You know, this past couple of weeks has been really hard for a lot of people that follow bodybuilding and even follow powerlifting, because we all got something from them. But you mentioned John Meadows, the mountain dog who recently passed away. He went full send on his coaching, his life, and all that. And a lot of people read that and they was like, well, what the hell is full send? Explain that philosophy, because you're not the only person to use that term. I've seen Liv Roth and Hunter Labrada use it numerous times, along with, trained by JP, Jordan Peters, and Dusty Hanshaw. Explain that full send mentality and why everybody needs to use that mentality.
Going full send means go all in. I'm gonna use John Meadows, since that's where we're gonna start with. John decided he had a cush job as a corporate banker, he had a nice banking job, and he said, you know what? I want to be a bodybuilder. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't already training or wasn't already working out. He had been doing it all the time, but he decided, hey, I'm going all in on it. He had to go. And then, like, he was sitting up there, like, he was afraid, because, like, when you have a cush job, when your check's coming in, when this is gonna happen. But he went into a life where he had to answer those questions on a week-to-week basis, on making sure that he could take care of his family and take care of everything that he had going on. And so everything went into getting his pro card, everything went into getting his clients better results, everything went into, and going full send means you sit there, you take that big bet and you put it on yourself and say, I am going to go make it. And the biggest part about that, I actually started saying it because I wrestled in high school, and that's when I first started saying it. It just means to throw everything you got, just chunk them. But when I look at it, in wrestling, we never stop. It's, you shoot a double, reshoot, you miss, reshoot, 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 go until you get them. The idea of wrestling is to impose your will on someone else, to impose your will on the situation. And so, to me, it's very important that people, even whatever thing you decide to endeavor into, go full send into it, go all in on it. Go in and say, look, I am going to do this. You may fail, get up, do it again. I'm going to do this, fail, get up, do it again. I fail, do it again, fail, do it again. Eventually, you will get the shot. There's no reason to sit there and think that, oh, well, it doesn't work, so I'm going to stop here. No, if it's something you truly want, you keep going. And oftentimes, a really good, simple, general population understanding of this is when you lose weight. People sit up there to go lose weight, and then it's like, I've been doing this for 4 weeks. My diet's not working. What's not working in your diet? It's not the diet. What are you doing? What are you missing? Where is it going wrong? What are you tracking? What lets you know what's going right, what's going wrong? If you can sit up there and you can make sense of what's going right and wrong, you can eventually find what will make you successful. Full send, most importantly, is about being consistent, and then and just knowing, hey, I'm going to do this until I succeed.
Do you think that more people would benefit from going full send in every aspect aspect of their life? Because what I generally see is that we just kind of coast. We have periods of going full send, but then we have periods where we're just kind of coasting. Is it all in all the time, or all in at short bursts and then periods of rest? Do you think people would do better if they did it like that, or is it just 100% all of the time?
It's got to be 100% all the time. And this is why. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Period. Anything, when you really look at it, like right now, your son is right there, right? Are you a dad part-time? Like, do you sit up there, just about every decision you make after you had a child goes into like, hey, I have to be there for my kid. I have to make sure I have food, water, clothing, shelter, blah, blah, blah. Right? Then you also have to actually be present in the child's life. You have to accommodate all this long list of things that come with being a parent. You do not get to say, oh, I'm going to take time off from being a parent today. I'm not a parent today. I have no child. Well, if that's the case, then take one step back before that and look at the foundation of who you are, your character, what makes you you. At any point, you take time off from something that you do that's within that realm of the scope of building the foundation of your character. All of a sudden, it only takes one time to go rob a bank and you become a bank robber. Like, there are a lot of things you do one time and that's exactly what you are. I had a drill instructor tell me, you quit now, you're forever a quitter. You can't go back and say, I'm not a quitter. And no, you quit that one time. That was enough. There's no backing off or going, oh, maybe. No, that was it. So you have to, when it comes to whatever you do, those things, that's your legacy. That's the story that's going to be told after you're gone. Those are the lives that you could have impacted or you didn't, because people will remember. Maybe that's not that big of a deal for you. But however, if you want to look at you want to sit there and be the person that sits there and complains online about something not going right or how life looks and blah, blah, blah. No, everybody's watching, everybody's paying attention to some degree. And you have the ability to make a change in the world that you want to see by being who you say you are every day when you look in the mirror.
What's the mentality that people need to have to become that champion, not just in powerlifting, not just in bodybuilding, but in life? Because a lot of the things that you put out on your social media, it's pretty much life applicable,
So for me, it's funny. I tell everybody that out of everything I've done in my life, out of all my adventures and journeys, the one thing I always counted on was being able to reach for a barbell. I was always counting on being able to get stronger. If I couldn't get a barbell, I could do push-ups, I could do squats, I could do wall sits, sit-ups, V-ups. I could come up with something to get stronger. If you're sitting there, you look at life, you look at everything that you want, you have to understand it's a matter of being. You have to be what you see yourself being. If you want to be a champion, be a champion. So if you're going to be a champion, then you have to do what champions do. You have to do all the aspects of training. You have to, you have to be in charge of your sleep. You have to be in charge of this. You have to be in charge of saying, hey, I'm not going to go drinking. I'm not going to. Matter of fact, a really good example of that would be Jordan Shallow, the muscle doc. Someone asked him recently, what's your favorite alcohol? What do you drink? He said, I don't drink. I don't drink because that is against my goals. If you can't sit there and understand that, then you might want to go back and re-listen to what I just said. His goals, he knows exactly what he wants to do. He knows what he wants to accomplish. And guess what? Anything that gets in the way of that, it will not be him. It will not be him impeding his greatness. So you have to understand, be, do, and have. If you be the person you want to be in the future right now. Do what that person would be doing right now to get the things that they have in the future, then you will be a lot farther.
Who are some of your muses? And I say muse because I can't think of another synonym in coaching. Like, who are some of the guys that you look up to, who you actively talk to, and that you borrow different methods from?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of cheat this question because I actually just talked about this the other day. So when I was in 5th grade, the first autobiography I ever read was Vince Lombardi's book, Autobiography on His Life. And it actually told me I wanted to be a coach. Like, I read coaching books since 5th grade. And I always thought it was so cool, the way that he had this simple philosophy. You know, everybody knew he was going to run the sweep. And he did it over and over again. And in that simplicity, he won 7 championships. In 5th grade, I understood this stuff. I understood that simple won. And then so that actually carried over into my coaching and in my philosophies on training and everything else that I did. So when it came to like actually coaching as a powerlifter, and so yeah, of course, I had one training partner for a long time that followed John Meadows when I first started training with him when I was in Sacramento. That's actually how I got introduced to John Meadows. And then another person I really like to look at, of course, like everybody else, Louis Simmons or Charles Poliquin. Those guys were early into when I was a kid, you know, reading magazines and reading books and watching VHS tapes, trying to see what they were doing. And then now it's like, you know, sometimes I'll ask Dan Green different things because we both have very similar training philosophies. And it'll be interesting. And like we may do something that's slightly different rep ranges for different intensity purposes. Also, I talk to Greg Panora all the time. Of course, he's my powerlifting coach. So I enjoy talking to him because like he has it's a very simplistic approach to doing something sophisticated. So those are the two people that I muse off of a lot, that keep me focused and into powerlifting, into training. Then when it comes to bodybuilding, Matt Jensen, I really like watching what he does because again, it's very applicable and he does a lot of things with a lot of tracking, a lot of measurable variables and understanding, hey, am I getting further? And again, he also believes in what I believe in, which you don't have to actually change our exercises every freaking week or every month or like, are you improving? Improve this, improve this, improve this. When you stop improving it, okay, we'll look at doing something else. When it stops working, go to something else. That's the way I feel about accessory movements. Do them until they stop improving. When they stop improving, switch it. So those are my big. Oh, and then I have to go. I'm talking to a Chicago guy, Ed Cohn. A lot of honestly, and I was actually talking to him about this recently. The first training program I got was the one he did in Flex Magazine. I think I said that in the last episode. And so I will ask him questions when I get a chance, especially because he comes out here sometimes, or anytime I get to see him at a meet, I'll say, hey, I was doing this, I was thinking about this, and he'll give me some feedback and we'll go back, bounce himself back and forth. Easily one of my favorite people to talk to, again, because it was like something. And then his coach, Marty Gallagher, I look at a lot of things that he did with different athletes, like Mike McDonald and then, well, some of the research he did, like with Mike McDonald and other athletes like that.
It's funny that you bring up Ed Cohn, right? So, I'm desperately trying to get back home just to visit, eventually, live back there just for a period of time. Side note, because I feel that I feel that my kids should have an inner city experience, right? They should at least spend a period of time within the city, and not a shitty part of the city. Like they should have a big city environment of which they can live in, and which, if me and my wife will protect them and guide them, that they can thrive in, right? But I pulled out, speaking of Marty Gallagher, I pulled out the Purposeful Primitive book. I got that book when it first came out. You're familiar with that, aren't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I have that book still, and it profiles two guys, one being Ed Cohn, the other one, Kurt Karwoski. So I'm reading this book just to, just kind of refresh and, just look at different training methods that I may have forgotten about. And there's something to be said for simplicity. Going back to switching out exercises every week when you're trying to peak for a powerlifting meet. Why do you think that people just have to do that? Why is there not looking at powerlifting training? Why isn't there any perceived value in the power of simplicity?
Because people's brains respond to novelty. They want to believe that, switching this up is going to change something. It'll get them a more immediate gratification. Like when you switch exercises, you get a new soreness, you get a new pain. Oh, it must be working. Oh, it must be changing something. It must be. And the reality is this: if you're sitting up there, if your main movements are improving, if you're hitting new numbers every week, and you're all of a sudden you're able to sit there and see those foundational accessory movements improving and translating over into bigger numbers in your primary lifts, then you are seeing success. And the other side of that, you aren't getting hurt. You aren't sitting up there experimenting with something new. But people want to enjoy the novelty of it. And it's kind of funny when you look at a lot of the top lifters, even the West Side guys, they have their favorite accessory movements that they just stick to and grind through. And so it always cracks me up when people say that. I'm like, no, if you just sit there and you pick that set of accessories and you see them improving, like Dave Tate said, like when I saw my incline close grip going up, I saw my bench press go up.
Yeah, it's funny how people don't want to just stay with the same exercises. Now, I myself, I suffer from novelty brain, right? But in the end, what I have, so let me just kind of explain for the people listening. You should always have your main exercises that you try to progress on every week. I don't try to progress on every exercise. Frankly, at my age, I cannot, period. Once you reach 40, it's very difficult to start progressing on a lot of the big movements. Now, there are some movements that I keep in there. Hammer strength incline press, that's the main movement I try to progress on. Any type of machine bench press, I try to progress on that. Leg press, I always try to progress on that. Hack squat, I try to progress on that. So I have 1 to 2 exercises that I really try to push, but the rest is filler to fill up the muscle with blood, round it out, to prevent any injuries. So you should definitely have those exercises that you progress on, but then there should be some other accessories that you use to just fill out. You know what I mean? And I think that will kind of alleviate some of the novelty brain that people suffer from, that they can focus on pushing exercises while at the same time giving their body, or their mind rather, a stimulus.
So it's funny you say that, because like I actually enjoy your program a lot. Now, but one thing that I think people also fail to understand about variables and novelty is that, again, you can look at improving an exercise without necessarily looking at improving the weight, where you could actually go in and say, oh, well, can I get 12 reps today? Can I only get 11? Can I do this for 2 minutes? how many reps can I get in 2 minutes? How many reps can I get in 5? You can do several things to challenge you and to push you through it. Or if you have a training partner, do force reps, and you could do different things to make those situations a little bit harder, or to give yourself a little bit more novelty. Oftentimes people lack the ability to be creative in their training. And to me, a big part of coaching is how to make one exercise variable without changing the exercise, just changing the variables within the exercise to make it effective, to give a new stimulus to the athlete.
So someone doesn't want to pay you for a program. They're all like, you're full of shit. I don't believe you, but some of the advice you're giving is good. Who are some of your go-tos that you would advise that, okay, if you're not going to listen to me, maybe these guys can help you?
So this depends on the person and what the reason is that they don't. I actually have a list of people I will suggest people to. One of them being, so it's kind of, I'm probably gonna take some flack for this, but people I enjoy actually working with or that I know. We have Ashley, Dr. Ashley, the veggie lifter on IG. Danny LaMartina. And then I have, who else? Ronald Tarvin. He is Sir Jim Rat on IG. Also, another one of my favorite people, of course, Joe Sullivan. And then I got 2 more. My other one is, I can't think of his name right now. Silva. I think you had him on your podcast.
Ryan Silva. Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan Silva. I really like him. Me and him actually talk a lot. We talk about 3 or 4 times a week about training and different things like that. And then, well, those are some of my favorite coaches right now. And there are a lot of, because like each one of us, we have a lot of crossover in what we do and how we do it. And then Ashley, she even does, she does conjugate and she does a bunch of variable bodybuilding stuff, which I really like and I really enjoy. To me, it's really kind of funny because I tell everybody, programming is essentially the same. It's progressive overload to get you to an end result. How you get there, it could be any other map that we draw. Some people want a harder map. Some people want an easier map. And then it's different personalities, different personality types. And then plus just being able to see people work. Also, you know what? One other person I'll recommend would be Tracy Curry out of Memphis. As a matter of fact, I actually sent my sister to him. So, I mean, I can't get a better endorsement than that. I actually sent my family members over to train. Yeah.
I think it speaks to a level of humility if you can, like I see a lot of coaches think that their advice is the end all be all. But I remember I'd say about a couple of years ago, or more than a couple of years ago, Guy's sister Nino said he was working with a coach, and I believe it was Fakhri Mubarak at the time, and Fakhri and him had a conversation after a show, and it was basically like, I've taken you as far as I could take you. You need someone else. And I think both Guy and Fakhri said that they shed some tears over it because they were a unit. They were a unit for a long time. And then Guy went to Chris Aceto and got better and whatnot. But I definitely think it's a level of humility that needs to be there to say, hey, this is way above my knowledge base, and I don't think I can do this. And I'm all for coaches saying, well, stick with me, let's learn your body and go from there. But at some point, where does the line get drawn saying, hey, this is above my wheelhouse? Because I tell people, like, I don't coach for powerlifting, right? I hate calling myself a coach. I don't advise for powerlifting, right? Because my best squat is 600, my best bench is 402, my best deadlift is about 630 something. So I can only get you to a certain level of strength, but I can't get you above that because I don't know how anything over 402 pounds feels.
So it's an interesting question. You know what? You said two really important things to me in that. But the most important, and this is the one thing I truly believe, is that, like you said, they were a unit. Like they worked together, they were entwined together. If you have that relationship with an athlete, and then where the athlete is following your advice, matter of fact, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the last podcast, where if you're on the train and you're going to a destination, you don't jump off the train and walk. You don't go jump off the train and go look for another ride to the destination. You ride that train till you get there. Now, if you have an athlete that tends to jump off the train and then tries to come and run and catch his way back onto the caboose or whatever, then you know what? Obviously, that athlete never bought into the system anyway, or they don't buy into themselves. And in some cases, you can't get that to happen. Now, that's one part that I think coaches should consider, is that sometimes you have to let a client go because that athlete keeps jumping off the train. If that athlete keeps jumping off the train, leave them off, lock the door. And then in some cases, there can be a chance where you get to know the athlete and then you see how they respond to what you're doing. And you know your style, you know what you do, what you believe in, what you'll test. And sometimes, like right now, a big controversy is diuretics and different parts of peaking in bodybuilding. Um, you know, maybe, and I hope some coaches will come to the realization of understanding that their own protocols and understand what they're doing. But a big deal to me is actually knowing, hey, I don't know exactly how to work with this particular client and passing it off and being able to respect and accept that. If you can't get them there with what you know, not what you assume or what you guess, what you know. If you should have some basic principles before we talk about anabolics and drugs or anything like that. You should have basic principles that should get them to the end result. That gets the train to the destination. If you can't do that, then yeah, it's time to pass it off.
Now, devil's advocate. What if you feel like you can solve it, but you just need more time with the athlete? What conversation needs to be had there?
The conversation that you have to have at that point, it's actually a twofold conversation. The first part is the athlete buying into the system? If the athlete is buying into the system and trusts you, then you can go to the second part of the conversation. And that second part is understanding what is it the athlete feels they need for them to get to that next gear. Because oftentimes, if you have an idea of where it needs to go, it's now time to get the athlete's mindset to the point of going to that next level.
Because I see a lot of coach hopping, right? Now there's just some guys that like, okay, we can't, my knowledge base is limited. Like, and you see a lot of these guys and their knowledge base is limited. But instead of just saying, hey, let me pass the baton, they're like, oh, well, I need to learn your body, and I know this, and I know this, and I know this. I think it's okay to say, hey, I don't know this. I don't need your money that bad. So I'm just going to pass off the baton. Do you think that humility in coaching is very important?
I 1000% believe that. So I was actually having this conversation at a powerlifting meet a couple of months ago, where I was talking about the fact that, like, if a coach has never had a coach, they have no business coaching. If they don't understand what it takes to actually sit there and listen and actually practice discipline, it's hard for them to practice humility. They've never actually had taken the time to follow instructions themselves. So why should anybody else follow you? And then the other part in that humility is coaches should sit up there and be coachable. Coaches should be trying to learn, trying to educate themselves every day to get a little bit better. I know I'm a better coach than I was 5 years ago. I'm a better coach than I was 10 years ago. And that's because I spent every day for the last 10 years trying to get better. And then the other part of that is when you recognize that you're trying to get better and you're trying to educate yourself, you're trying to get better at communicating, talking, exchanging information, exchanging ideas with clients, exchanging ideas with other coaches, exchanging ideas with other people in other fields that can somehow help you be a better coach. Then, and you understanding that, hey, I don't know this information, but I want to learn. The moment you stop saying, I want to learn, you stop saying, I want to actually be a good coach. Because it's just like they're saying, rent's due every day. And if you're not sitting up there paying that rent, it's not going to happen. You are moving into a lower income house as far as your coaching goes. And you shouldn't be trying to do that.
Is there value in self-coaching?
Yes, there's a value in self-coaching when you understand first, and I'm going to say something that's going to be a little odd, I guess. At least I even feel that it's odd. However, with self-coaching, you must understand when you're coaching, you're not coaching yourself. You have to understand that when you're coaching it as if you're talking to someone else. You're coaching in a sense that you want to be able to explain what you're doing right now to a 6-year-old. Oftentimes people sit up there and say, well, I know my body. I know my awareness. Okay, well, if you know your body, you know your awareness. I want you to be able to explain that in the simplest form possible to where you can make what you just did for yourself explainable, understandable to help someone else. If you can't do that, then your self-coaching has become pointless.
Now, let's stay on the subject of self-coaching. It's one thing that I've always been infatuated with. Where do people go wrong with it? And in my opinion, the one thing that people do when they self-coach is to not surround themselves with, or let me rephrase it. The one thing that people do when they self-coach is to surround themselves with too many people with opinions. So I feel that if you're going to do this thing, you should have 1 to 2 people that you can bounce ideas off of. And then in those idea bounces, there's a common thread, and you go with that common thread, like a Venn diagram. You know what I mean? There's something inside the middle that you can use.
So I know you remember this. When we had all the forums and everybody was on the forum talking about their bodybuilding workouts, their powerlifting workouts, and they're posted. And you always knew there was like 1 or 2 people that commented that you're like, okay, when they comment, I know I'm doing something right. But when they gave me this information, I know I'm doing something right. A lot was to be said for the advice we got back then. And understanding, we actually learned exactly what you're talking about, and that we learned that it just took one or two people to sit there and say, well, I get what you're doing, but what do you think about this? Or I've done something like that, but this is what I did different. And because strength leaves clues, success leaves clues. And all programming is essentially the same thing. Is how you get to the end result is a little different, but it's essentially the same thing. It's progressive overload over time. So like you said, there will be a commonality between what two people think, especially if those two people have been successful at doing it. Now, the other part of that is don't get caught up listening to an idiot. And don't let that idiot be you. Because, I'm sure you wrote this program before. Yeah, any of us that are true gym rats, we wrote this program before. That program that's going to build the most muscle possible. It's going to make me the strongest person possible. And we put in this idea, we put in that idea. We came up with this drop set and this superset and this block. It's got the best exercise. But the truth is, you can't recover from that shit.
we were all deep, and I like the muscle rags, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the muscle magazine era. Oddly to say, it's not really existent anymore. But I think everyone that's been involved in this thing we call bodybuilding, powerlifting, we all enjoyed that era, but the magazines fucked us up to quality programming so bad. I remember seeing a back program, quote unquote, written by, ghostwritten, and it was ascribed to Paul Dillette. And I'll never forget this workout. It was a workout. It was 4 sets of pull downs, 3 sets of seated rows, and then 2 sets of close grip pull downs, or 1 set of close grip pull, or some. It was like total sets, 9 sets, and it was done 1 time a week. And they made it into a 5-page article. And I remember thinking to myself, Paul, this is why your back sucks. And whoever wrote this needs to be shot, because this is some of the most poor advice I have ever read. And I was 14, 15 at the time and knew that was total bullshit.
What's funny? You said that, and I immediately knew which article you were talking about.
It was the red and black font, right?
Yep.
Yes. I'll never forget it. It was this is how impactful that article was to okay, some people do not need to be listened to. It was 1994. If I am correct, it had the Mr. Olympia results in that, or it was a article, it was a magazine for the that profiled the Arnold Classic winners, because it was one of those weird years.
I'm pretty sure it was the Arnold. It had the Arnold winners in it. It was the Arnold.
Yes, because they had to condense 2 issues into 1.
Yeah,
I remember that. And I was like, this is the most terribly written article I have ever read.
The best part about the article, usually if they tell you do 2 1 set, whatever, any of that craziness, usually it's they put the little asterisks in, warm-up sets not included, or no, it had none of that. Matter of fact, it did not explain why or any of that. It was just kind of look, this right here, this is the back program. You should really just hit this hard 1 time a week. What?
Yes. And I always tell people the muscle magazines were great, but if you were looking at them for actual information, it gave you an okay starting point. And I don't think people understand how easy they have it right now. In my opinion, if you set out to get a pro card, right? If your goal is to be the best bodybuilder you can be, if your goal is to be the best powerlifting you can be, you literally have the entire keys, the entire keys to the fucking kingdom, right? Because in no point in history have we had, and I'm just speaking overall, we have never had this much information accessible to us. We have never had the amount of interaction that we've had. We've never had the amount of how easy it is to get somebody that's knowledgeable or even a professional to coach you. We've never had this, right? Never. So the keys to the kingdom, if you want to self-coach, if you want to coach, if you want to build programs, if you want to write your own program, you have the keys to the kingdom in front of you in regards to being able to do that. So a lot of people that came up in this era, they should have no problem nailing a total. They should have no problem being hyper competitive on a local show, regional show, junior national show, national show, like all things being considered. We're not going to get into outside stress, job. We're not going to get into that. All things being equal, you should be absolutely able to finish where you want to in any type of show.
I'm gonna add on to that. If we were actually to look at right now, we could actually say we are living in the Library of Babylon as far as it comes to strength and like fitness. You have access to some of the premier knowledge as it's been written in the history of strength sports.
And I don't want to cut you off. I don't want to cut you off. I want you to expand on that. So keep that thought process in mind. I want to bring up a very good point. A few years ago, I lost the book. I need to reorder it. But a few years ago, I ordered Super Training by Mel Siff. Do you know how hard it was to get a copy of fucking Super Training in 1999? I went to Elite FTS, put in my debit card information, and got it in 3 fucking weeks, if that.
So, because you brought that up, so I wanted Super Training in like 2004, 2005. And I had to, back then you go onto the website and you try to put in your card, it kicks you off. Try to put in the card, it kicks you off. Then they tell you send a money order to blah, blah, blah. Because even Amazon didn't have it at the time. And I actually, so I got a money order, had to go put that in the mail, send that off. You don't get a confirmation, you have to wait. Yep, so I get what you're saying. Like I said, you have, right now, they have the ability, the capacity to get any information they could possibly want on getting stronger. And whether that be getting a coach, whether that be getting a book, getting a website, getting a membership. I mean, look, you have people like Joe Bennett and Jordan Peters and freaking Lane Norton all have, apps and full-on things. Chad Wesley Smith, the Juggernaut app. You can get full-on, so many of them. You could go and look right into them and get the information right there at your fingertips on your phone. So anybody says they can't, they're just full of it.
Yes, they're absolutely full of it. And a lot of people, and this is where I kind of, so not to diss coaching or anything like that, but as soon as people walk in, like I'm trying to verbalize it to where I don't sound like a complete hater, right? What kills me is that, so coaching, in my opinion, is an absolutely manufactured industry, right? It's been around for years, but it's been manufactured. When coaches say the first thing a beginner needs is a coach, or when a beginner walks in and say, well, I need a coach, what we've what you've absolutely done is that you've removed any type of autonomy or critical thinking from that person in regards to physique development. So, do I think that everyone needs a coach at the outset? No, you need some time to figure out things. You need time to read. Now, you can easily say, well, I don't have time. You know, I run 2 businesses. You know, I'm a full-time dad. I just need to be told what to do and I'll do it. Okay. Okay. Here's a problem with being told or saying whatever I'll do it. You'll end up in a situation like you have with a certain coach that is in some hot water right now for prescribing some things that should not have been prescribed to people who aren't doing too well right now or who are not with us anymore. So you run into that. And like, I get the rush to try to do things, but also at the same time, when you just walk into something and say, hey, I need a coach who can coach me, you have removed, like I said, autonomy and critical thinking from you putting 2 and 2 together, right? Because again, the keys to the kingdom are in front of you. You should be able to figure out, hey, this isn't right, or maybe, hey, I shouldn't be doing this.
All right, so I'm gonna take off and run with this. Another great powerlifting coach that I do refer people to. I just thought about this. Trevor Jaffe. Trevor is freaking phenomenal. Super intelligent, very, very well at explaining how to fix little things, especially with technique, and just getting and being able to be a great communicator. But again, Trevor also did a lot of self-coaching, and Trevor also has the ability, like me, like you. He was one of those people who, when we didn't have stuff, we made it up. We created it, you know, using cinder blocks or whatever. And that becomes very important in being able to understand how can I make this work. Now, with what you just said, over the last couple of years, since I've been working in gyms less and working hands-on with clients less, it's become one of those things that I've taken it upon myself to not allow my clients to not be creative themselves. I will give you an exercise, but I will say, you know, but if they have this machine or they have this, or if you would like to try it this way, go for it. Let me know how you feel. I also agree. You don't need a coach to start out. You need to go screw up. You need to go find out why you need a coach. What is it you don't know? What is it that when you read, you don't understand? When you try it, you don't feel right. So I had this woman who came to me and she asked me, do you train big girls? And I was like, man, step right up and come to my office. Let's do this. But she had this, because like I trained a client for a bikini competition. It was take me a friend of mine. And I was like, yeah, I got you. And so when she came to me, she had already lost a good 60 pounds by herself. She got down, and you know, she's actually one of those people that we look for in the gym. She's one of those people, she's a woman that went in the gym overweight. She was 300 pounds. She lost 60 pounds by herself. And then she said, you know, I need a coach because I need to get a little bit better. I need to know what I don't know. And then her first question to me was, she says, I'm afraid of free weights, so I use all the machines. And I don't actually know what to do, although I can see the videos. I don't understand, like, if I do sets of 10 or 12, when do I go up? How do I know? And like, really, she just needed me to reassure her that it was okay. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes, like, that may be what that's what you may need a coach to do. However, you shouldn't be told to like actually just sit there and think for like they're doing your thinking for you. I encourage people to ask me questions. I tell them, ask me questions whenever you want. I have one client, I actually had to have multiple Zoom calls with him to sit there and talk to him about the program and while we were doing every little step with diet, with nutrition. Like he was like, He's like, man, look, I lost all this weight. I done this. And like, I'm just trying to be competitive in baseball. And I'm also trying to get 15 miles in on my bike. And I'm like, cool. And like, I sat there, I walked him through it, and I explained exactly what the system was supposed to do and how he should feel. He made it through the second. We started on the third week, and he sent me a text message. He says, man, I'm not gonna doubt anything you say anymore. He's like, I'm back he's like, my weight went crazy for a couple of days. He says, but now at the end of this week, I'm at the same weight I was a month ago, and I'm eating almost 1,200 calories more food. I'm training harder. I'm riding my bike faster. I'm averaging 15, almost 16 miles an hour. I was just hoping to get to 15. He was like, I don't understand. How is this happening? And I said, just because you don't understand, that's why I want you to keep asking me questions. I'll explain each step to you, and I'll do it until you get it. And then so you can repeat this without me. That's my job. I look for ways for people to get better, and I want you to understand the system and how you can implement it yourself. But often, especially with the said situation that you're talking about, it's like when I looked at some of the things that were prescribed or suggested or improved upon, I was like, I was honestly, I was heartbroken that somebody would sit there, especially when you see multiple stories of people saying that certain protocols were shared. So like you have like 10, 15, 20 athletes doing this at one time. That is not only, I mean, yeah, it takes away. Clients often come to you because they're looking for the guide. They're trusting you to be the GPS system to get them where they're going safely. I'll repeat that word, safely. That's what you're there for. That's actually the essential part of being a coach. The lady came to me at 240 pounds after losing 60 pounds. She didn't come to me because, you know, she felt I could get her to lose another 40 pounds, another 50 pounds safely without being a detriment to herself. And as a coach, you should take that most important out of everything that you do. The goal is to guide them to somewhere safe. If you can't do that, stop coaching.
The funny thing is that people take the word safely and confuse it with slower, right? Safely, in some instances, yes, does require a bit of a slower approach, but we're talking longevity, right? You want to be doing this for a long time, and not being competitive, but like at least staying in the gym, staying in the weight room, having that same passion for it that you had when you first stepped inside of it. So like safely can mean slower, but also at the same time, it's vital to being healthy and having some longevity that can equal the skin in the game. So you probably in turn can start coaching people.
You know what? I almost want to take offense to the slowly part. I'll tell you why. Because guess what? Most of the times, if a coach is rushing you into a show or trying to get you there faster, that means they don't know enough to do what it takes for you to look the way you should look the day the show happens. If you're trying to rush the result, if the coach is trying to rush the result, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And he's hoping, guessing, wishing, and waiting to see what happens. Because if you really think about it, and I'm gonna use Chris Aceto because, you know, he's Chris Aceto and everybody kind of knows a lot of things that he does. I mean, it's not really hard to find. But think about him. He trained Sean Roden for his Olympia win, right? Because he coached Sean a little bit. Now, and I'm using this because when we look at Sean has a great structure. It's amazing, right? That's literally what kept him in the top 3 before he actually won. Now, did he sit up there and go, "Oh, I need to"? You're taking somebody at their peak physical ability, and you're trying to do small changes to get them to go over the top, right? You're not looking to sit up there and go, "Oh, I'm going to get you there faster," because no, faster did not get you to the top 3 in the Olympics. I don't know any. How many Olympians did Ronnie Coleman lose before he won one? Faster did not get you to the top. How many did Jay Cutler lose before he actually won one? How many times did he get in second place? Matter of fact, Field won the Arnold. He took what, a year and a half off? It's like you're not going to sit there and tell me you see somebody that's successful getting there faster. Nobody gets there faster. Big Ramy, everybody, when he first came out, he was amazing, right? He's supposed to be the next big thing. How long since he was called the next big thing did it take before how many Mr. Olympias were there before Mr. Olympia was Ramy?
I tell people, right, because everyone thought that the anabolic chicken in Kuwait was special. And I'm like, I told people, like, if he's going to win the Mr. Olympia, he's not a person that I would have picked to be Mr. Olympia, but that's just me. You know, so be it. But with him, he needed time to mature, right? And muscle maturity, whether or not you agree with the term, whether or not you don't think it's backed up by any shit that's on PubMed or any type of study, there's a look that says this physique has been through the fire of hard training. It don't look like it's been through a Similac fucking bath. We've been doused. We've been put in the River Jordan, so to speak, to invoke some Black spirituality here. We've been put in the River Jordan numerous times, right? Even though he was very developed and got a pro card relatively fast, it still took him time before we were able to say, okay, this dude deserves to be Mr. Olympia, real deal.
Exactly. So to me, a coach that sit up there and tell you they're gonna get you somewhere faster, they're selling you bullshit. The coach trying to get you that faster is selling you bullshit. I tried to not cuss today, but yeah, no. We're on a topic that bothers me. It's like you have to, if you can't sit there, look somebody in the face. No, matter of fact, if you can't look at their little kid in the face and tell their kid that, hey, you're gonna get their parents home, stop doing what you're doing. Because you should be, that's your job as a coach. You should be the stopgap between them and that crazy idea in their head that they should be Mr. Olympia this year. You should be the reality check. Like when you should be the person that tells them that they're fat. That's on you. You should be the person that says, okay, don't sit there and gas them up on being something that they're not, or getting somewhere that they're not going to be. Because if you're doing that, you're doing a disservice to the athlete, to the sport, and to people trying to actually get into the sport. Because people should know, hey, this took time. We earned it.
And then another thing about fast coaching, you see this in program hopping, or not program hopping, I should say, coach hopping, that yes, like people still coach it, like people still athletes or go to different coaches because they feel that they can get there faster. And this kind of contradicts what I said earlier. Figure out some shit before you jump, right? Because if you just done one show or one meet with a coach, then that's not enough time. You know, I kind of have the rule 2 to 3 shows. You should probably be able to figure out some shit by that second show. And then the third show, you should get the desired look that you're getting. Life events, that's going to happen if you have a significant life event. Okay, you may want to extend that timeline out. But, I that's just where I'm coming from on the subject.
Okay, so another part, I don't know. I feel like I'm one of the few people that's a little odd about this, but I feel like you should program a private show, program yourself to where, like, as a coach, I always like to get my clients to, like, at one point where I want to see what it looks like to have some improvement, and then what it looks like as I add on variables. So if I want to have like a pre-peak, I want to see what it looks like. So if I do like a full 20, 24-week program, at the 8-week point, I want to see how you respond to like dieting down a little bit. I want to see like just, even just a short 2 to 4 week period where we kind of make things a little tougher before we actually make things a little tougher. Especially if I don't know you, if I'm getting to know you. Because after we've done it a few times, then I can actually say, oh, okay, last time we went through this peak, this didn't work out right. Last time when we were training like this, how does it feel compared to, it's one thing to say when coaches say, I don't understand the athlete, or well, you know what? Part of understanding the athlete is not throwing in a bunch of stuff that you can't understand and regulate. Don't keep prescribing things that you don't understand how the person's body reacts to it. Don't ignore what they're telling you. Don't ignore that they're saying, hey, I got digestive issues. Hey, I'm bloating a lot. I'm getting a lot of edema. My heart's racing. I hadn't slept in 2 days. I'm afraid to go to sleep. All those things are different signs or variables that you want to know, that you want to keep tabs on, especially as it comes to, like you said, we're dousing you in the River Jordan. We want to see when you're gonna reach out for help. When is the water too deep? When do you need me to pull you back up because you're choking? As the person sitting up there dousing you, I need to be present and available to understand when to pull you out.
And back to being mature and having that muscle maturity. And I'm gonna sound like a hater again, so forgive me. What are your opinions on low volume training for bodybuilding? Now, I will say it obviously has a role. I like it, it's cool. But to be a wholly low volume training throughout an entire career, I don't know. I think that volume training gives a different look to a physique that you won't necessarily get with just low volume training.
All right, so first and foremost, I like lifting heavy. It's no secret. However, I like volume. I want to do a lot of it. I want to be able to train as often as I want to. Yeah, I know. Science says do 3-4 days. Old school lifters did every other day training. Blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I know what I want to do. I want to train 6 days a week if I feel like it. Leave me alone. I highly feel that there is a place for volume. And part of that place is keeping you healthy. It's keeping your joints, ligaments, and structure healthy. It's also getting the blood flow and getting the adequate amount of movement in. Like there's a time and place to stress the muscles and to force adaptation. However, we get a lot of benefit from actually just moving just to get that blood flow going through the elbows, through the shoulders, through the hip, trying to keep all those things consistent, keep those movements up and present, then we're able to actually not only better recover, but also better understand our bodies and how we respond. You're not gonna see someone have a career like Dexter Jackson with a high tolerance of low volume training. It's not gonna happen. Dexter competed for almost 3 decades. And there's a reason he was able to keep healthy, and he made the adjustments, made the adaptations when he needed to. So I feel that low volume training has a place, especially early on in your career, but also you should also be looking at understanding how to have phases in your training where you can put the more volume in, how to put volume into your lower volume training in order for you to get better results, better recovery, and just feel better.
All right. I think we've touched on a lot of training and a lot of, how to structure things, but there's one thing that we've talked about several times. So I definitely want to touch on it a little bit. Being Black in the fitness industry. For the past couple of years, we've had a very interesting shift. One that I didn't really initially even think of, right? We have a lot of we've always had varying thought processes politically inside of bodybuilding and powerlifting, but they've gotten louder as the years went by. I did not realize how large of a right-wing, extreme right-wing, I should say, component inside of bodybuilding and powerlifting. And sometimes it can come off as very anti-Black. What are some of the things that you have encountered in the industry, or some of the things that you've observed inside the industry that's just made you say, this is bullshit?
First, we're gonna throw in a disclaimer. I'm originally from Alabama. The first time I got caught the N-word, I was in 2nd grade. And I was told I couldn't play in the treehouse because I was one. When it comes to these things, I tell people, one of the first gyms I trained at, I had four known members of neo-Nazi and like white supremacist groups in the gym I trained at. We actually all trained at the same time. And we kind of were training partners because like we unloaded and like, typical stuff that you see in like a powerlifting gym. So I kind of came into lifting that way because I was like, 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, somewhere right in there. 17, 18, 19. But so it was always kind of present for me, especially in the beginning. But one thing that I learned over time was it's kind of like you just expect it, unfortunately. Now, over the last few years, just last 5 years or so, 5, 6 years, it's kind of funny where people will say things, especially since I came to California, because they're more open about being inclusive. It becomes even more apparent that they don't know how exclusive they are. And the fact that like to them, it's just, this is what it is because you act that way, or because you are from whatever stereotype they see on TV. Or in some cases, the lifestyles that they see certain people live around here. They've made these dedicated assumptions. And then you mix that with the echo chamber of right-wing information, and then you fuse those two things together, you see a lot of people saying things that are a little obscure. I actually know a few people that have done some stuff that's a little out there that I don't support and I don't feel okay with. But it's usually, I think the hardest part for me with all of that, I have to say, is the people who don't say anything when it happens, or who allow it to be around them when it happens. And then they want to report it to you, and that makes no sense to me. You were there, you had the ability to have a voice and say, hey, that's not okay, stop. But instead, you decided to bow your head, lower your head, and come back and tell other people that so and so did something. I have a problem with that. I think that if you're going to be in the fitness industry, if you're going to be into health, wellness, blah blah blah, at the point of incident, that's when you speak up. Don't come back and do it later. I'm not gonna, like I said, there's one incident that comes to mind that we talked about where somebody reposted an article and they were really gun happy, saying that they were going to go and put some holes in some dark people if they came and messed up their city. And it was like, to me, first of all, the fact that he was comfortable enough to say it. Second of all, the fact that people came to his aid to be like, yeah, and agree with him. That bothered me. And so I absolutely I've even refused to quote the person even when they gave sound advice. I went and found somebody else to say the same thing. But it's unfortunate, but it's what it is, and it's something that you really have to be mindful of who you spend time around and who you give energy and space to. And especially lately, I've chosen. I'm just not going to. I don't need the advice from these people. I can get it from somewhere else.
And then my last question: How do we get more Black teens involved in bodybuilding and powerlifting?
So I coached wrestling at an inner city school for a long time, for a couple of years. And one thing that I actually found was all the kids wanted to lift weights. At the high school that I was at, they actually had a weightlifting class. And it was interesting that the class stayed packed and the kids actually stayed involved. I think it's really a bigger thing that we actually give them the opportunity. We have to make those opportunities visible. One big thing that I know in inner cities, both my sister she has a degree in social work. That's what she does. She's been in some of the worst, toughest environments I've ever heard, from dealing with troubled kids who were sex offenders to violent offenders. And with that, she always pointed out one thing to me that actually got me into helping more kids, was the fact that most of the time, the kids or the parents don't know certain programs even exist. They don't know certain opportunities are even available. As Black people, as a Black community, we should be doing more to make those programs available, visible to inner city kids and to the Black community. We should be sitting up there saying, hey, this program, making those programs visible and accessible, because if we did that, a lot of them will be wanting to do it. Because, and it's crazy and it's really kind of funny, but when you actually look at social media, one good thing that actually came from it is that those kids see those things. They see fitness, they see people, with the bodies, with the shape, with all these different physical influences, putting them in a situation where that right there becomes a little more attainable, makes it so it's something that they desire to do. And the best way I can think about showing you that is look at how many kids you can find that got a mixtape. The reason they got a mixtape is because they saw so-and-so on the corner selling theirs. They know 5 people that made a mixtape. Well, guess what? If you know 5 people that can bench press 2 plates, you're going to go try to bench 2 plates too.
All right. That's all the time we have. Man, I appreciate you coming on board and helping us out with the podcast. Always a good session with you. Do you have any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I'm on part with my favorite thought is this. I want people to go out and be the version of you that the child in you needed right now. Be that person. Be the person that you always needed when you were a child. Get the goals that you wanted. Go out there, dream big, chase it, and ascend yourself to transcend yourself to help other people. And remember, if it don't make muscle, it don't make sense. My name is John David Reynolds III. You can find me at JD Reynolds 3 on Instagram. Send me a DM. My DMs are always open.
And with that, another episode down. Again, John, we're going to have many more conversations, but I appreciate you coming on board and giving us a talk. And, you know, I consider you one of those coaches that a lot of people don't know about, but need to know about. So hopefully this gets you some more clients. This gets you to change some more lives. And hopefully this leads you on the right direction to even more.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And I look forward to our next conversations.
Absolutely. So for Vaughn and the team, John David Reynolds, this is Larry Brown. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. We'll be dropping some stuff on Spotify as soon as I can get that unscrewed up. And thanks, guys, for supporting. We'll talk to you later.